And former President Trump and Vice President Harris both making speeches today. Trump in his Mar-a-Lago home and Harris at the site of Trump's speech on January 6th. Joining me now to discuss today's campaign's developments are Drew McKissick, chair of the South Carolina Republican Party, and Lee Neves, CEO and chief strategist for Cross Currents, LLC. Thank you both so much for joining. Vice President Harris is still delivering her final message to voters from D.C.'s ellipse with the White House in view. In a recent interview with CBS's Norah O'Donnell, the vice president discussed the symbolism behind choosing this location, emphasizing the importance of visualizing the presidency and future leadership. I want to play a soundbite and get your reaction.
So I would and do think about that place more in the context of what will be behind me, which is the White House. And I'm doing it there because I think it is very important for the American people to see and think about who will be occupying that space on January 20th. And the reality of it is that most Americans can visualize the Oval Office. We've seen it on television. And this is a real scenario.
Drew, we'll start with you here. Given the significance of this location in recent times, if you will, how do you think this setting shapes her message to voters?
Well, look, I think at the end of the day, it doesn't do very much to shape it at all because she's not saying anything new. She even went on television, about a week ago and basically said she couldn't think of anything that she would do differently than Joe Biden. She doesn't have a real message on the economy, inflation, immigration, crime. Polls have shown that voters agree more with the Republican position on those main issues that every poll has shown voters care about over the course of this year. So really, this is more of an optic thing that she's doing to try to basically divert attention from what she's saying or not saying, in my opinion.
Lee, how might choosing this location, the ellipse right here in Washington, D.C., rather than a, say, swing state, how might it influence perceptions of her strategy?
It really drives home, I think, what the Harris campaign is trying to do here in the final days. I think you have quite a few voters in swing states who are on the fence. Are they going to vote for Trump because of all the bad actions? But, they're thinking of their pocketbook, but they don't want to vote for him because of how he is and the person he is and what the chaos that comes along with him. Or are they going to leave it blank, which at the end of the day is going to help Harris and not help Trump? And this really drives home that fact, coupled with the fact of the Madison Square Garden rally on Sunday, which was an absolute disaster. People are still talking about it. It is hurting Trump with Puerto Rican voters, 400,000 of which are in Pennsylvania. It's hurting him with Latinos. And this really goes to magnify the fact that this is a man who his actions, chaos follows. And it's not a man who's fit to be president. It takes everyone back to January 6th. Trump spoke from the ellipse, and then we all know what happened after. And that's the point that she's really trying to hammer home, especially with those voters who are on the fence of whether they're going to vote for Trump again or not.
Earlier today at Mar-a-Lago, the former president announced a new policy to seize the assets of criminal aliens and set up a fund for victims of crime, particularly those impacted by migrant crime. His announcement was accompanied by stories from mothers affected by violent crime. I think we have a soundbite. I want to play that for you, get your reaction, Lee.
So today, I'm announcing that for the first time under my administration, we will be seizing the assets of the criminal gangs and drug cartels. And we will use those assets to create a compensation fund to provide restitution for the victims of migrant crime, and the government will help in the restoration. The government will help in the restitution.
Lee, at this point in the campaign, just a week away until Election Day, how do you think voters will respond to this type of a policy proposal that addresses crime victims and also illegal immigrants?
It's a policy proposal that is nothing new. This is already being done. One of my clients is the district attorney of San Joaquin County, and what they actually do is they take assets from drug dealers, from gang members, from criminals, and they actually distribute it to nonprofits that help kids in the community. They've distributed nearly $1 million so far, I believe. My numbers may be off, but it's already happening. So it's not really anything new. And look, you're in the final days of the election. Both sides, I'm not going to be a complete partisan here. Both sides are going to come out with things that they think sound good for voters, but aren't really new, novel ideas that are happening.
Drew, I want to get your thoughts. Is this issue of illegal immigration a soundbite, or do you think it's deeply penetrating and resonating with voters this late in the campaign?
Absolutely. Look, and again, every poll since the beginning of this year, at least, has shown illegal immigration to be in the top 3, give or take, depending on what day you ask that question, and issues that the American people care about. And again, every poll has shown that those voters agree more with the Republican position than a Democrat position on those issues. Those polls have also shown that those voters believe that Donald Trump did a better idea or did a better job with immigration than the Democrats have since then. So anything that keeps that issue top of mind for voters is good for President Trump. As a good friend of mine once said, issues win campaigns. Focus on the issues, stick on the issues, talk about those things in a way that's relevant to people and the way they live their lives, and you'll be in good shape.
Another big story that's breaking over the past day or so, Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos writing that op-ed explaining his decision not to endorse a candidate, underscoring the need for more credibility in the media and a perceived neutrality. Vice President Harris expressing disappointment, suggesting that Trump's influence among wealthy figures might have impacted this decision. Drew, historically, the Washington Post and the LA Times have endorsed Democratic candidates. How might this decision to stay neutral impact the Democratic candidate, Vice President Harris, and also public trust in the media?
Well, I think, the Post didn't endorse candidates, I think, until about 36 years ago is when they started doing it. I can't tell you about the LA Times for sure. But, really, this is the kind of thing to me that's not going to matter very much to the average voter whatsoever. This would simply be a crowing point for the Harris campaign to, run in certain ad markets that, hey, this paper endorses me, this paper endorses me. Those things, in my opinion, don't make very much difference when it comes to these campaigns. The biggest thing here that makes this an issue is the fact that it's something that, diehard liberals expected to happen, and they're wailing and gnashing teeth now that it has not happened.
Lee, what role does media endorsements play in elections, and do you think neutrality aligns with public expectations when it comes to journalistic integrity?
I don't know if it aligns with public expectations, but look, I've been running campaigns for 26 years, and the only thing endorsements are good for is to give me a good line of copy to use in a TV ad or a mailer. That's about it. They really don't sway public opinion one way or another. I think this is a case of Jeff Bezos doing what's best for business, and he is a businessman, and that is his right to do so. But I don't think it really has. I'm going to agree with Drew on this one. I think it's a nothing burger, and I think it's really not going to have much effect.
Recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, former President Trump spoke about media coverage, suggesting that his treatment would differ if he were a Democrat. Today, he further commented on recent security concerns, expressing dissatisfaction with the response from political leaders and not having enough, Secret Service protection prior to the first assassination attempt. Lee, how do you interpret the response from political leaders regarding these security threats?
Look, I think, first of all, the first assassination attempt was horrid and horrific, and there should be no political violence, period. I think that former President Trump, not only as a former president, but as a candidate, should have been given the amount of protection that was required. And I think something like that, I really don't think this should be political. Something like the protection of our political leaders, be it Republican or Democrat, should be of the utmost importance. And politics should not be a factor at all when it comes to who gets amount of Secret Service protection. This is things that should be very sacred and should be even across the board.
Drew, could this kind of, political rhetoric and back and forth, given its strong language, influence how supporters or detractors react in a public manner?
At this point, I don't think so. I mean, there's so many things that, we live in a 24/7 media cycle. You do as well, obviously. And so real quick, we run out of things to talk about or think about. And then we think that every little thing that happens, that so many voters somewhere are going to be impacted by it. The truth is, typically, they're not. There are a few things that begin to move people in a campaign. And again, top of the list is issues. But beyond that, you have major events and so forth. Now, the attempted assassination attempts certainly were major events like that. And people take security seriously. But, to spend too much time thinking about, whether or not somebody gets this or that they've requested is going to move a lot of votes, I don't think so.
The richest man in the world, Elon Musk, has become increasingly vocal this election cycle, highlighting free speech and the First Amendment, leading some to call him the October surprise for this election. Lee, in what ways might Musk's involvement impact this election?
In the way any other rich guy's involvement would, money. I think that's the one thing that he brings to the table. He has his own super PAC, brings resources to the table to assist the Trump campaign, and that's the way he's going to be helpful the most. I don't think that Elon Musk himself is going to move many people. I think anyone who's going to be moved by what Elon Musk has to say is probably a core Trump voter already, going to be my guess. But he does bring those resources to the table and those resources to bear for the Trump campaign, Trump allied campaigns down the stretch.
Andrew, how might Elon's role with X, formerly Twitter, influence the position that he's taken for supporting former President Trump, the political landscape of this election?
Well, I think that's probably, at the end of the day, maybe the bigger thing. I mean, as Lee just pointed out, I mean, billionaires bring what they bring to the table in terms of resources, which typically go to super PACs and so forth. I think within the last week, you've had a Democrat billionaire announce how much tens of millions of dollars that they're putting into a pro-Kamala super PAC. Okay, that's fine. And there are things that need to be paid for. But the bigger impact, I think, that he has had over this entire cycle has just been his liberation, if you will, of Twitter, of the newly renamed X platform, in terms of, making sure that it is a bastion of free speech and that there's not going to be any censorship, political censorship, especially there, as you've had there in the past, and then most famously on places like Facebook, et cetera, which is the reason why now you've even got the European Union, or at least I think the UK, trying to come after that platform and potentially get it censored, banned, et cetera.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.